Well, it goes back a long time now, because about 15 years ago I had some various lumps and bumps that kept popping up, and they kept sort of trying to diagnose them and just said I'd be one of those lumpy bumpy sort of a people. And I had some other surgery, and when they took it out, biopsy confirmed it. So it really just unfolded from there. Well, I think once I settled into it and I understood, I developed a bit of a philosophy about what it meant to live with lymphoma without really knowing what it meant if I was going to get really aggressively sick. Life just had to carry on. I had 3 young children. They were aged between 3, 5 and 7. I was on my own and working and just really trying to carry on. So I think once I developed that philosophy about what it meant and get on and enjoy life regardless, that was fine. I think that's got to be part of your philosophy about life generally. Take what you get and just make the most of every day. Well, the first time that I came into sort of an aggressive phase was about 4 years later. So that was in 2000 now, so that's 11 years ago. It's hard to believe. And in that aggressive phase, I became very acutely sick but increasingly over a few months. And in that time frame, suddenly it dawned on everybody what was going on. And I commenced on a 6-month or 5-6-month phase of chemotherapy, which was fairly standard. I mean, I was outpatient based, half a day of chemo every 3rd week, and just deal with the consequences of that over the next 3 weeks as your blood counts go on the roller coaster ride, and you feel quite sick. And I certainly couldn't work through that phase. I was sort of too sick to work, but well enough to still be able to carry out normal everyday basic activities on some of those days, like still go to the supermarket and walk to school and pick one of the kids up. So I went into remission. So this is going into October 2000. I then actually enjoyed a 2.5-year remission, and I got established into a new career, and life was sort of bounding along. And I was still I really lived a day at a time. I don't think it would be fair to say I even went a month at a time. So it took me a long time to get the confidence to think long term and about anything really. But I did get established, but I got sick again in the middle of 2003, and it felt too soon. I felt a little bit robbed at that time, because I felt I'd done so well. But again, I just had to get my head around that and develop a philosophy about what this might mean. I was in there 5 days a week, 16-hour days, hooked up, literally 16-hour days, hooked up to the chemo. And I was probably sicker on the chemo, or certainly by the time I'd get to the 5th day of each week. I couldn't walk. I could barely climb stairs. The blood counts were so low, but I was just so weak. So those 8 weeks were very challenging. So I get to 8 weeks, I get to Christmas 2003. Peter Browett sits on the end of my bed and says, well, we've sort of kicked it to touch a little bit. It looks good on paper, but unfortunately we haven't given you a remission, and we're going to have to make another decision. So at that point, that was when he tabled the transplant option, autologous stem cell for me. Well, I think the thing about the transplant, it's a bit of an unknown journey, and I think it's in itself is an extraordinary opportunity to even experience. And I think over that month or so that I was in the haematology in the transplant unit, very isolating time at that stage. What I was impressed about, though, was as sick as and intense as that period is, you sort of come out of it. I came out of that faster in some ways than when I'd been limping along the year before, having week after week after week of fairly intense chemo. So I could see the advantages of it. So I was really fortunate with the support that I had, and parents who were able to move in. It'd be fair to say that my husband really struggled over that time, just watching what was happening and trying to maintain his life as well, and work and things. Friends find it really difficult, and people would pop around every now and then. But in effect, once I was in the unit, really it was quite isolating, socially very isolating. But then again, on the other side of that, you're really sick. You can hardly talk to anybody. You can't read, you can't focus on anything, you haven't got any sleep pattern. So in a way, in a way, it's probably easier that people aren't there. And I guess I'm a little bit stubborn. And I knew that things might not work out, but I've been so incredibly fortunate that they have worked out, and I've had a remission that no one would have ever dreamed of. So, you know, I am very, very, very lucky. I know that. But I think I would sort of think about the things that I love the most. And, you know, it isn't about travelling in the Greek Isles or going off on some trip or material things. All I really wanted to do was be able to be well enough to go home and make a cup of tea. I couldn't even lift a kettle, you know. So take the kids to athletics, drive them around, do the things that I actually thought I hated the most, like going to the supermarket. Actually, they were the things I wanted the most to be able to do, and it grounded me enormously to know that to know that those are the things I want to do, that the minutiae of life is way more important than than you think it is. I can't complain. I've had this remission now for 7 years. And for anyone who's about to embark on this journey and they're wondering, you know, should I, shouldn't I went through all of that. I nearly, I did think about not doing it. And if I hadn't had the trust and faith that I did in the team, then maybe that would have been a different outcome. But to be able to enjoy good health, have a normal life, be running my own business, and my kids are now, pretty much all grown up, having been diagnosed initially when the youngest was only 3, and she's now at university and not living at home anymore. And I think about that period of time, how lucky I am, and that the treatments allow us to, survive this long. And, I think just make the most of every day. It's just worth it. It's so worth it.